Well, hello, Brad.
Hi, Kellen. How
How are
you
you?
doing?
I'm Brad. It's a wonderful day. If
Is
I
it?
can tell you anything, Brad, the last couple times we have hung out, there has been major shifts in the political system in America, and I was so relieved that at the end of the day, there wasn't a coup, that there wasn't an impeachment, that there wasn't someone sworn in. It was just a normal day in America. It was actually very nice.
They still have those? Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
kind of strange.
It's
Kind of
good,
strange,
good to
honestly.
know, I guess, that it
Yeah,
can still happen sometimes.
sometimes. How are you, Brad?
Well, I'm pretty good. I thought we were friends, but I don't
We're not friends?
necessarily. I mean, I don't. You gave me homework after the last stream.
Brad, I thought I said, hey, you might want to check out this fun show. I didn't consider it homework. I gave you like a prompt in terms of, hey, maybe we could talk about this for a little bit. It seems like it really kind of struck a nerve.
A little bit.
Uh-huh.
So people might have noticed the last few times we've sort of just been asking each other sort of somewhat random
Mm-hmm.
things back and forth and discussing whatever shakes out of that.
Yeah.
But this time around, we have a specific topic
A very specific topic.
because of this. Let's say prompt. I'll give it to you. I don't know if you specifically said the word homework, so let's go with prompt.
We'll go with prompt.
To watch Hellier, or at least
Hellier,
some
yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
I ended up binging all 15 episodes
Which
over
is
like 3 days.
it's impressive. Like, I mean, I had to take a break between season 1 and season 2 just to kind of wrap my brain around some of it. And then, the fact that you did both seasons in 3 days is a testament. Is a testament to your commitment to the paranormal.
Let's see. But before we get into my thoughts, let's say, why don't you tell people what the heck it is? Like, most people probably won't know
Most people don't know
what
this.
Hellier is.
Well, for anybody who's here and joining us, we've got some lovely people here. I think I recognize our friends Jen, BJ, Hannah. Anybody else here? We would love to know from you.
Hannah did it right.
Hannah is doing it right now. Shell is here. This is going to be great. This is going to be great.
And awesome.
There are going to be times where I'm going to ask the audience a question, and I would love it if the audience can interact with us in those moments. But it's going to be a lot of Brad trying not to scream at me tonight, folks.
It's fine. It's fine. All I can do is promise to try.
Okay. So how I found Hellier, much like some of the themes of Hellier, there was a synchronicity. There was a Brad. Have you ever played? That game on Google Maps where you see a Google Maps photo? And then you have to guess where in the world that photo is. And you can kind of zoom in and around, and then you kind of put it on a map, and then you get points for how close you are.
I don't think I have.
It's a very, very fun game.
I bet it is.
If you've never played it, maybe we'll do that another time. It's a great time waster. I had been playing that, and the guess that I had was around that area, around Hellier. I said, what in the world is Hellier? I Googled Hellier, and it came up, and I said, okay, what's the worst that can happen? And then I went down the rabbit hole. That was how Hellier came into my life. Hellier is a story about two groups of paranormal investigators. We have Greg and his wife Dana, who kind of have sort of a traveling road show of the paranormal. Dana is a self-proclaimed hedge witch. Greg is sort of the more ghosts and goblins sort of person, and they go to cons, they go to different places, and they talk with people, and they've had many shows. They've got lots of podcasts. It's one of those things where they are very unique, and they've got their lane really well established.
Sure.
And they do their stuff really well. I want to make sure I have all the names right, though. What is gosh, see, I should have come prepared, Brad. Excuse me. It's bring this up.
Preparation. I'm not familiar with that.
Perfect. Dana, Greg. Gosh, there's so many good people in it.
Yeah, there's a Connor in there.
Connor is the director. Gosh, I should know this. Anyways, there's a director, and then there's sort of a sound guy who's also doing a little bit of stuff. Gosh, there's so many. I'm trying to just bring up the Wikipedia page so I can just reference some of this stuff. Carl,
right?
Of Carl and Connor, perfect. And then there's Tyler Strand, who shows up later, who is my favorite anime character ever.
Sure.
So Connor and Randall started working on a separate film. Connor is the Carl is the cinematographer, and then him and Connor started working on a movie about a haunting in a hotel in Colorado, a hotel not too far of where my family used to stay in Glenwood Springs, and I knew of this haunted old ski lodge there. And they all get together in this weird little town of Hellier, Kentucky, because of some strange coincidences with an email and stories and them just trying to figure out what's going on, and this idea that there are little goblins in this town who are abducting people and taking them into the coal mine. And from there, they go to this strange, burned out, old coal town. It's very, very scary. It's very dramatic. It's a very well shot.
It is. I'll give them that. The production value is definitely there.
It's very, very high production.
The soundtrack is a little strange at times, like the sound design, but like it's good. It's well made for sure.
They know what they're doing, and I think that is one of the key things. We'll get into that. I'm not going to play my hand just quite yet, right? Sure. As I've said before, I am the Mulder, and you are the Scully. I'm the one who wants to believe, Brad. You are the cynical skeptic. You have no interest in the paranormal, no interest in the rest of this, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see. So they go to Hellier. They use some devices. They use a ghost box, which allows them to listen to sort of static and supposedly ghosts and paranormal things. When you start to meditate while listening to the ghost box, you will hear certain things. And so they have sort of these seances there in Hellier, and eventually they go to the mine and they have a little seance there in the mine. And then that's season 1. They don't meet any green men. They don't have anything else like that. There's no big reveal of what it is.
Nope.
Well, you got to have a season 2. So what is season 2? Well, it's not just about green men. It's about a large government conspiracy and demons. And then the Green Man, a ancient Nordic Celtic god. And season 2 is so all over the place. And again, folks, it's all over the place. I'm not describing it well on purpose because I want people who are even the slightest bit interested in this to go and watch it. Jen, this is 100% real. This is not a Blair Witch thing.
It's an interesting question.
It's a very interesting
question. It is billed as being real.
It is very, very billed as being real, but the how real is it, right? That's the question. Because again, we'll get into the cinematography, we'll get into the production value. A lot of that is there. They all play their parts perfectly well, right? Sure, yeah. But that's Hellier. And I said to myself, the last time we were here, an old friend of mine who I knew when I first moved to Chicago randomly saw me tweet about this. He came and sat in here. Brad found an old animation that I had made when I first moved here to Chicago because I was bored. I remember showing Nathan, the guy who's here, that animation before I ever put it on YouTube. And I was like, boy, the synchronicity here, that's wild. And I was like, oh, synchronicity. Brad doesn't like ghosts.
So you say I don't like them. I just don't believe that it's a thing. I don't have like an emotional value towards ghosts.
Exactly. So You know, Brad, I know you have notes. I know you have a lot of thoughts.
I have quite extensive notes. They're sort of like random nonsense just to remind myself of things. But
so Brad, maybe we should start with your background in skepticism is pretty far. You also have some connections to some fairly famous, if not one of the most famous, paranormal debunkers, correct?
You're talking about James Randi?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got to meet him, and I've had a couple of conversations with him over the years before he passed, unfortunately, fairly recently.
Do you want to let people at home know who James Randi is?
Well, James Randi is a very well-known, at least in skeptical sort of science-y circles, and a debunking of the paranormal, as someone who used to do like stage magic and sort of transitioned into debunking paranormal things. After being like the technical like effect creator for like crazy bands and stuff like that, like he's had a very strange life.
A very strange life.
But like the last bunch of years of his life, he spent primarily debunking paranormal things, including having $1 million challenge where literally anyone could just show up and try to prove any paranormal phenomena, ESP, any sort of clairvoyance, telekinesis, any kind of psychic things, basically anything that would be classified as paranormal. And if you prove it within scientific bounds that they both agree on, then you get $1 million. And it was like that for years, and no one ever collected it.
Yeah. Brad, real quick, there's a lot of love going on for us in the chat, which I'm a little uncomfortable with.
It is weird having people like enjoy what I'm doing. I don't know if I like this is over. Yeah, I can cancel everything.
We're out. You ruined it by supporting us.
No, yeah, but James Randi was a very well-known skeptic, let's say, and I have been in those circles for quite some time. I even overdosed on homeopathic quote-unquote remedies on Parliament Hill like a decade ago with a bunch of people. It made local news and stuff, but it wasn't like a big thing. All that kind of stuff. Very, very skeptical. Very skeptical.
So Brad, you come from a history of skepticism. I asked you a couple weeks ago, are ghosts real? And you winced, and you answered the question as politely as a Canadian can.
Sure. I didn't even swear or anything.
You didn't.
I can't promise the same thing for this episode, but we'll see, I guess.
We'll see. I think people were mostly interested in seeing Brad come a little unhinged tonight. So
there was a couple of people like, I can't wait to see that. I'm definitely tuning in to see Brad really pissed off.
Brad lose it.
Doesn't happen very often.
Gosh darn it, I don't understand it.
Oh, dang it all. Them ghosts, like Scooby-Doo style,
So I want to ask the chat a question. We're gonna wait for a second, but I would love it if everybody in the chat, and again, Jen has already done this. She already again, I believe that Jen has clairvoyance. She could see the future, so she already answered the question.
Sure.
But Brad, you said ghosts are not real. I want everyone in the chat to say either ghosts are real or ghosts are not real. Not what a ghost is, just ghosts are real or ghosts are not real. We'll wait like a minute.
See?
Emily's here for yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would say, to be fair, I would say that I do not believe that ghosts are real. There's not really a way that I can prove it exactly.
Well, we're just talking about belief.
I haven't ever seen any evidence that convinced me that ghosts are real.
Yes,
and I have seen a lot of attempted evidence.
So if you can, in the chat, please write ghosts are real or ghosts are not real. And we can start with, well, that will be our starting point. And by the end of the night, who's ever here, we'll ask again, do you believe if ghosts are real or not? And we'll see if you've changed some minds.
Okay.
How about that?
That sounds like an interesting plan.
Right? So, Brad, where do you want to begin tonight? Where do you what's the first thing you needed to say to me besides fuck you for making me watch this?
Well, my first note is just fuck, it's one of those. Which I think was about 3 minutes in.
I mean, the beginning, I mean, again, on a production level.
Yeah, I mean, it looks great. They do a good job. I'm not like taking a dig at their ability to make a show. Clearly, they did a good job doing the thing that they were trying to do. I'm not arguing that.
And they didn't get paid for this at all. This is a labor of love. There's no money in this as well. They just wanted to do this because they believed in it, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, who knows really, but it seems like they believe in it.
We'll get into that. I want to have a whole different section about who these people are.
Sure.
And what they're doing.
So I don't think it will surprise you when I say that I did not particularly enjoy the show.
I am not surprised. I'm not shocked, but I am disappointed.
I really just thought they were really bad investigators on every level.
Wow.
They were way better filmmakers than investigators, in my opinion.
Okay. So, Brad, walk me through that. As I am not a professional paranormal investigator, what does it take to be a good investigator of the paranormal?
Okay, so the first thing, sort of the thing that sparks their trip to Hellier and everything, they get a weird email from someone, right? That they don't know who it is. But they get some weird emails. There's a little bit of back and forth. It's very mysterious and spooky, and there's lots of ambience to the filmmaking of like making it a spooky thing. They're going to go investigate, see if there's these little goblin guys, in or around Hellier.
I'm going to get if we can get a photo of the goblins, because I think people it's the goblin as an image is kind of gross looking, right? Like Hellier goblin.
Oh, the one that they drew like for the art of the show? Yeah.
This dude is not good looking at all. And trust me, I look at my face every single day. I should know, right?
So while you're finding that, anyway, they go to Hellier to investigate, to see if these little goblin-like dudes are legit, or at least try to find the guy that's been emailing them, because he stops emailing them. And so they go there, and based on information from the emails, they're pretty sure that they found the property in the house. And then they immediately leave without even bothering to take down the address or
it's a great point
for the cave that he's talking about, or do literally any investigating at all once they've crossed into a different state and they're starting this major investigation. They just immediately leave. That's the first investigative thing that they do.
Yeah. So this is the goblin. This is the goblin that I guess is going into people's homes. Very strange looking.
Well, that's the one that they drew for the art of the show.
Yes.
The picture is significantly less detailed.
Oh yeah, the picture
it's just like a blurry whatever. It might be like an eyeball, and like this, it's nothing really.
It sort of has it feels very intentional to say, well, let's make it kind of look like a goblin, or let's kind of make it look like an alien.
Yeah, but it's very much like it could be anything. It could be a blob. It could be like whatever. It's not detailed.
Here
anywhere near this.
Right there. There's the dude. This is the little man. This is what he looks like. Right? Like
so like these are like based on witness statements and stuff. Little drawings. But the only picture that they have of it from those emails is just a blurry mess that could be anything. But anyway, so they're going to investigate this thing, and then they immediately leave without checking anything out, and don't even have the address, because later they have to go through their footage to figure out where this place was again. And it's just sort of a string of that. Like they'll find a thread to pull, and they'll pull it. And as soon as they get anywhere close to a potential answer, good or bad or what, any kind of answer, they'll just go, oh, what's that shiny thing, though? And then they'll stop looking at the thing that they had a lead on and go to try to find another lead that's like super flimsy, nothing.
Yeah.
And try to build that into an interesting lead. And if they do, the second that it becomes an interesting lead that they could actually investigate, they find another shiny thing instead of investigating that thing. That's the entire series, is just a string of that. Which
you are
if you're going to investigate something, it seems like not the best way to do that, in my opinion.
Brad, I think you're right. But Brad, that wouldn't make a good internet television.
It wouldn't make it. I'm not. They are good at making a show. Like, it's a well-made show. It just annoyed me at every single step. Every choice that they made was about making a show and not about investigating a thing that they were claiming to investigate. Which, I mean, that's fair to if that's what they want to do, like, whatever. But calling it an investigation into anything was tricky at best, in my opinion.
Brad, perhaps, again, you are coming from the investigation of a skeptic. You want to prove it wrong. I think the intent, and again, I'm not defending Greg. I think Greg Newkirk is fantastic. But I think his idea is to try and cast a wide enough net to try and figure out what it is. Because again, the first episode, they do a very, very good job of saying, we do not follow every lead we get. There's a lot of people who send us bullshit emails, who send us things that aren't real. We don't chase everything around. We're smart about that. But there was something about this. And again, the interesting thing that I think they do, and I encourage anyone who is even a fraction of an ounce interested in what Brad and I are talking about, to go on YouTube. The entire series is there. Watch the first episode. And if it doesn't hook you in that first episode, don't waste your time. But they do a very good job of hooking you and bringing you in to say, okay, I'll watch this ride. Let's see what happens.
They make it very spooky.
They make it.
They do a good job of making it spooky, which, again, if you're investigating, say, caves, tunnels, things like that, spooky mood lighting, great for a show.
Great for a show.
Not so great for an investigation.
Yes. Brett, I'm sure we're going to get to it eventually. But I need to know what you think of the essentially the ghost radio.
It's nothing. It's noise,
Brad,
so that you can pick out words.
How can you say it's nothing?
I've used one.
Brad, you put the headphones on and you listen, and you're listening to the noise and you're meditating, and again, the spirits, the entities, the things out there, they speak to you. Right, you saw it happen.
Those are called radio waves. You're getting random snippets of usually AM radio, but depends on how the spirit box is made, I guess. Mm-hmm. And you're just getting constant snippets of radio, commercials, songs, whatever. Even just in the static, you'll hear words or whatever because you want to hear words. Mm-hmm. You could do the same thing with white noise or any kind of. You do the same thing. Psychics have done it, just flipping through cable channels and building sentences out of the random scraps of sounds that come out, as you're flipping faster and faster. It's nothing.
But Brad, I mean, that implies that rather than the universe or these entities telling us what we need to hear, that maybe we are trying to find what we want to hear, or is that what you're saying?
Essentially, it's a way to explain ideas that you have and have an excuse that's external to you to spit them out. Essentially, it's noise that you can pick up, whatever. And I mean, we don't even hear what they're hearing, right? So, like,
no, we never
static. It could be nothing. It could be, who knows? They could be tuning into a particular radio station and just getting random snippets of stuff. Like, it literally could be anything. And even if I would grant the spirit box the ability to give actual messages, they're looking for goblins. They're not looking for some psychic or ghost that can
Yeah.
talk through radio waves.
That is the first time where I was watching it where I was like, what does the spirit box have anything to do with them looking for a goblin? Right? It was like, well, Connor and Carl had been using the spirit box in Colorado because they were investigating ghosts. And then they bring the spirit box here, and it's like, well, this is a leap. And then they just go all in with the goblin thing.
It's just they pull a thread, and as soon as that thread starts getting a little bit taut, like we might see the end of this thread, we got to get another thread. They instantly let go.
They do a good job of that in terms of how the episodes are done too, because they will. It's like the end of that thread happens and the episode is over, and then a new episode starts and they've done something new. So in terms of the episodic nature of it, you're like, all right, cool, that episode has been concluded. So you as the audience member passively watching are like, all right, cool, I'll forget about that, because you're trained in television to say, well, this happened. And I'm only going to be thinking about what happened in the past unless they bring it up. I'm not going to be constantly saying, but what about this? What about this? Right?
Sure. It's extremely well structured as a fictionalized television show about some people that are essentially cosplaying the X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
But as a supposedly reality-based investigation, they don't do a good job, Kellen, in my opinion.
All right. Brad, in a past life, I was known to be paid to stand up on stage and perform what some call improvised comedy.
Sure. Now, in a past life, you're talking metaphorically.
Metaphorically, I'm saying a couple of years
in the 1700s, Brad.
1700s. I was a comedian.
No, I get you.
Yes.
The beginning of that statement started to tweak a red flag, but we got there. It's okay.
And I used to teach at the Second City Theater here in Chicago, and I would tell people about pattern recognition, about our brains as humans. The reason we're here, the reason we're staring at each other, talking across the waves of the internet, is because our brains are so good at recognizing patterns, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
amazing.
Again,
good at it, really.
We want it. We want, like, the reason why comedy works is because as a comedian, you are creating patterns, and when the audience, there we go.
Maybe haven't seen them in person. I don't know.
As the audience are seeing these people stand up on stage, and that stand up, that sketch comedy, that's anything, patterns make our brains go, oh, this is good, this is good, this is good. We see it in all different types of art. And there are so many times in this show that pattern recognition stuff, like that was my red flag, where I was like, I think they are, as editors and as producers, are creating these patterns so that the audience says, oh, this has to be connected. Whereas if you were to read this as a script, you would say, this is nonsense mumbo jumbo. None of this makes sense. But the imagery, the sounds, all of it is so well structured as a piece of entertainment that it's impossible for me as to not be drawn into it, despite the fact that I can see the strings being pulled that way.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, the production value is definitely there. They are good at making the thing that, people will want to watch.
Exactly.
I'm definitely not disputing that at all.
In the beginning, the first shot of the show, they're walking through the woods. It's ominous. You don't know what the show's going to be about. You don't know what's going on. And then they stumble on the thing. We're not going to talk about the thing because I don't want to spoil it for people. But the thing is really, in the end, kind of weird and a kind of letdown, and so much of let's put a bow on it, where it's like, what? But when they show the thing, this object in the beginning of that very first scene, it's such a mystery, right? It's such a mystery box in terms of like, what is this going to be? So that when it comes at the end, your brain goes, oh, that's what it was.
But it's really nothing.
It's really nothing.
It's absolutely nothing. They put it at the beginning because they've spent 3 years gathering footage, and they edit it together. Like, oh, that would be a good thing to foreshadow right in the beginning. Even though it's nothing. There's no payoff.
So, Brad, let's step away from the show for a second, and let's talk about the morals or ethics of paranormal research and investigation.
Sure.
Brad, how do you feel about people who make a living being paranormal investigators? Do you think that that is a fair way for someone to make a living, or are these people the same as, let's say, snake oil salesmen or televangelists who are promoting curing cancer through their touch? Like, I mean, you can tell where I'm going.
I would definitely put them more towards the snake oil salesman end of the spectrum. Depending on the group, maybe better or worse, depending on what they're trying to do. There's definitely groups of people that investigate paranormal things that are trying to just do it in a neutral, as scientific way as they can. Just those things don't tend to be very interesting to watch. So the ones that get attention are sort of the more dickish ones, in my opinion, because they're better at like fluffing it up and making it seem fun or interesting or more real than it can be a lot of the time. Whereas someone who's like legitimately investigating it, it's not usually going to be very interesting to watch. And at least in the cases that I've seen so far, haven't really turned up anything.
Yeah. Brad, can we take a moment? I want to talk about Jen's question because I think this actually gets into an element of the paranormal that maybe people want us to talk about, which is cryptozoology.
Sure.
Jen asks, so is the Chupacabra a goblin? Now, Brad, do you believe in El Chupacabra? I mean, again, there's
plenty of animals that eat other animals, like who knows, but I don't believe in the Chupacabra specifically.
You don't believe in the goat sucker?
No.
Do you believe in Bigfoot?
No.
So, but you believe in the Yeti because you're farther north where the Yeti is, right?
No Yetis either.
What about the New Jersey Devil?
The sports team? I mean,
that's very good, Brad. Very good. Good night.
I got a sports thing. See? I know sports thing. That's the one. But no, I don't believe in typically any sort of cryptozoological thing.
But
at least not one that's been around for more than like a couple of years, because people that are actually searching for an animal that exists tend to find it within a couple of years.
What about a Bigfoot? I mean, they've been looking for Bigfoot for more than 50 years, right?
That would be my point. If it existed, they probably would have found one by now.
But Brad, that implies, again, Brad, we're talking about the great North American ape here, right? We're talking about this larger idea of there's primates in every other region of the world except for North America. There's no New World monkeys. There's no primates there. There's got to be a Bigfoot, right?
I mean, no, that's not really how biology works.
Right? It's funny that we use, but Brad, we're using science to explain this, right? I'm using my science voice. There has to be.
Right. There's definitely a lot of science voice in Hellier, or science adjacent things too, that don't make any goddamn sense.
Any sense at all, where it's like, this is
like you mentioned the spirit box. They also use a god helmet at one point, which is a real thing that a scientist made to study how electromagnetism affects your brain, basically, in different areas, especially your temporal lobe. That causes some very interesting hallucinogenic effects in a scientific environment. But it's very, very low powered and doesn't really have any long-term effects as far as they can tell in a scientific setting. But then Dana uses one in the show, and she's specifically like, every time I use this for like more than a week, I feel off and it's weird and stuff like that. Like, either that thing is broken and you shouldn't be using it on your brain, or something's wrong with your brain and you need to see a doctor.
Yeah.
Or that's not a thing that's happening, and you just like, there's not really an option there for the thing that they're trying to explain to do what they say that it's doing at all.
And that is, again, the thing that I kept getting confused about in that first season, where I was like, what are they using this for? We're talking about a goblin. This is about getting out there and finding a goblin. Why are we using these other things? But again, this was this idea of maybe they got to talk to this girl. Maybe they got to talk to these people. They introduce these phantoms, for lack of a better word, and that seems to be the narrative reason to use these sort of paranormal sort of magnifying microphones to be using the spirit box or using the God helmet, which is always so funny.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense though. And like even if you grant the God helmet the powers that they claim that it has, which yes. I wouldn't personally, but even if you did, just doesn't work like that. Like, it's not physically a thing that could help you find goblins.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brad, I'm looking at the chat, and we have a little bit of a quorum going on in terms of people believing that houses can be haunted. And I believe that they're talking about.
People do believe that.
They do believe that. I don't think they're talking about like a haunted house at like a county fair or at an amusement park. Sure. I believe in those. I believe that there are haunted houses.
I've been to some of those. I've been to some haunted houses too. Mm-hmm. It's always boring.
It is, because you know that they're all actors. But Brad, do you believe that spirit, someone's death, could remain in a place in space and time that other people could experience? There's been stories of ghosts, specifically a haunted house. Like, you have to at least admit that a haunted house is not a new phenomenon, right?
Oh no, super old, yeah.
Hundreds of years we have heard of, as long as there's been houses, there's been ghosts, right? So like,
as soon as houses start to be made out of wood that could make noises randomly, there have been haunted houses.
So you're much more of a Stone Age or thatch house. There's no ghosts in thatch.
I don't know. I don't know how far back those stories would go, but I'm guessing they increase with the complexity of the physical house, because there's more things that can make random noises or move or whatever.
So the senses of the auditory senses of a home making noise, you're able to say, no, it's not real. But what about when it gets cold? What about when people feel a presence in the room with them? You can't. There are people in the chat, Brad, who are excited. They want to see you get angry, and they want to see you tell them they are wrong. This is your chance, Brad.
My chance. Well, I would say that air conditioning vents are probably responsible for more ghost sightings than ghosts. Sometimes you just get a chill, or you hit a hot spot, depending on where you are, the time of year, and all kinds of things. Temperature change. I just can't. Like, even in my own life, like, there are people in my immediate family mm-hmm. that believe that my grandmother haunted her house after she passed. Mm-hmm. And their reasoning has almost universally been a particular door that opened randomly sometimes, a thing on the wall that just like refused to stay in the nail and kept falling off randomly, weird noises in the night, all things that I experienced staying with her in that house as a child mm-hmm. that were happening while she was alive. And then she passed when I was a kid, and those things kept happening because the house didn't change. It was very old and crooked and made weird noises sometimes, and the pipes were bad, and it was a weird house. Mm-hmm. But like, those things didn't change after she passed. They just were still happening.
Yeah.
But now they were attributed to her still being there and haunting the house.
Now, do you think, Brad, that was a way for your family to deal with her passing? Like, I mean, and again, there are plenty of people, especially here in the chat, who moved into a house that was haunted. Like, there are ways in where, like,
there's lots of reasons, and like, I'm not gonna dig on anyone who has had an experience, and like, I can't disprove someone else's personal experience. That's mm-hmm. just not a thing.
Yeah.
But if I don't have one of those personal experiences, or all of the experiences that I've had so far have been pretty easily explained, in my opinion, it's a hard sell to say that reality works very differently than I assume it does when it comes to ghosts and things. Because it's a very big leap to explain how ghosts function just on a fundamental reality level. That no one
Brad,
has
I'm gonna put on my Fox Mulder hat for a second.
Perfect.
Right?
Do it.
What harm are people? What harm is being done to the people who believe this? Right? If someone believes, like, let's say your family, well, grandma's still in the house, right? If somebody says, "Oh, I go to this home," or I grew up in a home where there was a ghost. What harm is it in letting people believe this, right? The interesting thing about paranormal stuff, specifically ghosts, there are going to be these outliers, these people who are going to try and capitalize it. There's plenty of TV shows, people walking in like, "Oh, did you hear that?" Right? There's a lot of that sort of stuff. But if I'm just a person who lives in a home and I think there's a ghost here and I never talk about it, but I feel that way, is there any harm in that?
I would say same as the snake oil salesman. Financially, no. You're just sapping people of their money. It's essentially a scam in a lot of ways, depending on how people are going about it.
Sure.
Mediums, psychics, what have you. People getting paid to go and deal with a haunted building to cleanse it of spirits. All of that kind of stuff is sort of financially damaging at the very least. And could potentially be psychologically damaging if they're feeding into someone who legitimately has like mental, like legitimate hallucinations or something and should really seek help. But they're instead feeding into those delusions, and that will just get worse and worse as things go on.
Yeah.
And probably the financial pit will grow and grow as well at the same time.
What is so difficult is it seems like people want to believe in the paranormal, but then the moment they believe in the paranormal, there is this door that opens for them, a metaphorical door, not a metaphysical door.
That would be cool. As soon as you believe, doorway just opens,
and suddenly you can see your third eye opens.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. See, that would be cool. I would be into that.
There is a door that opens that sets so many people up who, and I'm going to use the word faith in a lowercase f faith. We're not talking about big faith, right?
Sure.
We're talking about ghosts.
That'd be a different episode where I can piss a whole different category of people.
Yes. We'll have an episode where we talk about capital F faith and that whole situation. But we're talking about lowercase faith here, where those people who want to believe so hard set themselves up for being manipulated by people who want to take advantage of those people, right? And that's always the scary thing for me is I think there's nothing wrong with believing in ghosts until you allow someone else to control your life who believes in ghosts more than you, right?
Sure. It tends to create holes in people's critical thinking in a way that is easily exploitable by people who know what those holes might be. Whether that is a problem or not depends on a lot of the situation and if there's money changing hands or whatever, but it definitely creates opportunity for people, let's say, that are less than honest, or even if they believe themselves and they're just they want to make a living at it and they say, oh, this person can probably fund my next project because I can feed into whatever it is that they're believing currently.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of opportunists out there who are going to continue to see, well, these people can help feed me and I can give them something so I'm not hurting anyone, but it's still dangerous. There's a couple things that I want to talk about in the chat briefly. Michelle brings up, I love going to New Orleans. There's so many great ghost tours in New Orleans. To me, when I think about a ghost tour in New Orleans, it's like a magic show, right? I know that the ghost tour is fake, but there is something really enjoyable. The same way when you walk into a movie theater, right? The reason why the MGM logo shows up is it's to tell your brain subconsciously you're going into a dream state. So you can believe anything that you're going to see. All of this is all fake, but it's totally okay. Thanos is going to snap his fingers, and then eventually all your buddies are going to come back, and it's going to be great, right? We go to movies to escape. And in some ways, I think we used to go to live theater, like a magic show, to escape. And I do think that when I have been to ghost tours, there is a theatrical element to it to be like, this is just great to see live theater, right? This is really, really fun. And if I know that I don't buy it, but if I believe even 10% of it, my ability to experience the theater of it is increased, as opposed to like, well, this is not real. It's like, no, of course it's not real, but it's theater. Right. It's a fun time.
Right. And in a lot of ways, I would say that Hellier fits very well into that category for me.
Yes.
But I know a lot of people will take it fully as reality. And that's scary to me. Yeah. And they're feeding into that.
Yes.
It is very much structured as fiction, in my opinion. Yeah. To the point where at one point they are simultaneously saying that one of the people they are talking to in prison that they have censored for fear of she gets even more in trouble because she's apparently been gotten by the feds and framed for all these things because she was going to send them physical evidence of this place that she knew of in the forest. They're simultaneously saying that the government is doing that, but also they're like filming it and just putting the whole thing on YouTube because, you know, that's not something that the feds involved in that would ever bother checking on. Like, so it's like they can't possibly believe both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
And make it a show that they're going to release. Like they might believe those things, but then like Hellier season 2 would never come out. There would be some notice on their website like, you know what, guys, we just couldn't, get the money together, or there were scheduling conflicts, whatever. It just wouldn't happen, right? It wouldn't go public if they actually thought like 30% of the things that they say in the show were actually happening.
I mean, I completely agree with you, Brad. We can get into the second season. The second season jumps the shark. The first season is so good. The moment they start talking about a government conspiracy, the moment the balloon shows up, there's so many things in the second season that were so maddening to me to be like, why? This was such a perfect bit of entertainment, and then they came back and the first couple episodes, it's like they're revamping it, where it's like, well, wait a second, what was this about? And it's just so weird. There are some really great questions.
Okay,
Brad, I think Stacy has given us permission, right? So here's Stacy's story. Stacy said, hey, Brad, I want you to debunk my story.
Okay,
right?
Not on the spot or anything.
No pressure. A little girl sat at the foot of my bed when I was small and stared at me, and then I would wake up with my stuffed animals all over the place. I have a couple thoughts about this comment, but I'm curious about what you think. Let's start.
Okay. I mean, debunking someone else's personal experience, very tricky for many, many reasons.
Yes.
But I could come up with all kinds of ideas, I'm sure, that many of which she'll probably just say, no, it's not that. No, it's not that. No, it's not that. But like, we can't, like, it could have been a dream. It could have been just a weird memory that you had. And every time you think about it, it gets weirder and weirder because that's how memories work. Like if you're freaked out about the memory, it gets more and more strange and more believable every time you think about it or tell somebody about it.
Yeah.
Because someone else you're telling the story to will say some detail or ask some question that then the next time you're telling the story, you'll remember what they asked you, and it is a different thing. Like memory is weird.
Yes.
And that's why debunking, like my uncle's son, like, okay. I mean, I can't do anything for or against that. That's why I have to say, like, I don't believe in ghosts, but like, I can't prove anything to anybody. Like, it's not, all I can say is I haven't seen evidence that has been convincing.
Yeah, and again, Jen has a really great thing. Grew up in a large house, old house, 15 rooms. I was home, and a storm was rolling in. All the windows systematically closed in every room, one by one, until they were all closed. Like, that is an incredible story. Same thing with Stacy. Hey, there was a little girl who sat on my bed. Like, everyone in their mind, when you hear that or when you read that, you can picture it. You can picture the strangeness of that going around, because the lizard brain in you says, that is weird. That doesn't make sense. I am scared. And the scared makes it real, right?
Yep. And it makes it weirder than it was usually. And basically, we are the worst witness to our own life in many, many ways, just because of how the brain works. And so personal, anecdotal things like that, they can be very real to that person. And I can't disagree with that. But it also cannot convince me, just because of the nature of how anecdotal evidence is so very, very bad at understanding reality.
It's also tough. And Stacy, I'm not saying that you didn't see people sitting in your kitchen, but anytime you hear children tell stories, right? That's always the tough thing, because you think about how the two hemispheres of the brain are functioning, right?
Oh, sure.
We assume as adults, everyone thinks like us. But when we think about kids, there's so much stuff that doesn't make sense to them, because literally their brains don't know how to talk to each other, right? The left side of their brain is so just everything, because it's just pure imagination, pure creativity, right? And the right side of your brain is like, nope. And these two hemispheres are constantly at war with each other, so they can learn to communicate. And that is why when you hear stories about kids having these really vivid experiences, you have to believe that they are seeing something, because in their mind, their brain is literally trying to translate something. And then the right brain then has to say, okay, well, what is this, right? Like,
Right.
what did I see? What is it? And who knows what it is? But that's what's so interesting about some of these stories about, I used to see X when I was younger, and the older I got, the less I saw it, right? And that is not to say that it wasn't real for Stacy. That's not to say anybody ever had an experience like that wasn't real. It was 100% real for you as a child. But
Sure.
but does it prove that ghosts or goblins or aliens are real?
Right.
No. It proves that you had a very real experience as a child.
You ever want a really weird feeling that really gets you to understand how bad your brain is
I love to.
at sort of perceiving things and how memory works and is stored?
Sure.
Is go back to your elementary school and just walk through one of the halls.
Okay.
It's the weirdest feeling in the world, because everything looks wrong, because you're looking at it from a very different physical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything feels different, and it feels wrong, and things seem out of place, and even sounds, you might remember the bell sounding totally different, even if it's the same bell, because your ears were literally a different size and shape. So it sounds different. Like, memories are not a good recording system for reality.
Yeah.
At all. Which makes it, unfortunately, tricky when people have stories like that, because there's really nothing that you can say that would dissuade them. And I mean, whatever, it is what it is. But it's also not really going to prove anything to me, probably.
Yeah. So, Brad, let's get into season 2 for a second.
Okay.
There are two things that I want to talk about with season 2.
All right.
Season 2 is too complex to really break down in some of it, but they
go a lot of directions.
They go a lot of different directions. And again, I've already hinted at it. When they start talking about a government conspiracy, right? When we go from ghosts and goblins to the big bad government, and like there's underground government sites, and they're all connected to this, and sort of hollow earth theory. My brain gets so angry, Brad. And I want to believe this. So what is your experience when they start talking about the government being connected to these caves?
Oh my! I just switch into fiction mode basically. They're just making a show. They're making a fake show, and they know that they are.
Yes.
And so it becomes more of a comedy of like, how many times can I spot that they like tried to make it seem like they weren't making a fiction show, but then they choose the only thing that they could because it's a fiction. And they do it a lot.
They do it a lot. I mean, the moment Tyler
they literally have a witness
yeah.
that they can just video call that's in prison, so they can't get away from them.
Yeah.
That supposedly has physical evidence of many of the things that they've been investigating. Do they ever call that person back? I don't know, but there's no footage of it. They call them once in the show, and then they just ignore it.
Then they make her seem really dangerous in a way that I think is kind of it belittles their my ability to believe them. Like they make her like a weird villain in a way of like, oh, she's so dangerous. And I was like, guys, this is obviously a woman with some severe mental health issues, and you're going to make her out to be like the goblins.
Right. So there's two real options that I see there, right? Like they think that she's legit and she was framed and she has evidence of these things, and they ignored it.
Yes.
Or after talking to her, or at some point, they decide, oh, maybe she's not so legit and she didn't have evidence. But we're still going to pretend that that evidence that she gave us was real and make a show and pretend that it happened. And that's the choice that they make.
Yeah, there's so much stuff in the second season that is so strange in terms of how they're trying to do stuff. I know they're working on a third season right now. I know that they're working on something new, and I can't wait to see it, as much of a train wreck as it's going to be. But
it was infuriating.
Sure.
I've got so many. Okay, I talked about the God helmet thing. Okay, I know you don't seem to want to spoil the thing, but I kind of want to spoil the thing because it infuriated me.
Let's talk. Okay, we're talking about the thing in season 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing that, according to, I think it was Dana, but one of them literally said the most interesting thing that's happened to us in the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, Brad, there's a part of me that wants to let people experience this.
Okay, fine. Just know, like the thing Dana talks about, I'm pretty sure it was Dana, but one of them mentions very specifically that it's the most interesting thing that they've found in the entire season. When it gets to that point, you'll know the thing that really pisses me off, because it's nothing.
It is nothing, and it's
literally nothing.
What is so funny about it, Brad, is we talk about that first season. You've spent so much time. You're there, and then the thing happens, and there's a part of your brain that says, and this is what happens with cults. This is what happens with cults. You either have to say, oh, I've made a mistake with my time and my money.
Right.
I'm out of here. Or you have a sunk cost fallacy that happens in your brain that says, nope, sure, I can't look like an idiot, so I'm going to double down on this thing. And that's how they get you.
And that's how in season 2, they just go all over the damn place, because anyone who's still there is in, or they're hate watching it like I did.
Oh, yeah. And that was the thing for me is I was in the middle, buddy. I was in the middle where I was like, there's a part of me that says I am into this as fiction. I am into this because there's a part of me that wants to say I trust these people as storytellers, right? Because a real documentary crew, Brad, and you will agree with this, people who are real documentarians would have never put themselves in the center of the story.
Oh, no.
Right?
And they never would have went to every single investigation site completely ill-equipped to investigate anything that they claimed might have been there. At one point, the dude that supposedly goes through all of the caves and is like used to climbing mountains and stuff like that, he is using his smartphone as a compass and doesn't have enough battery to last the entire trip that he planned on making.
Yeah, man. I mean,
that's the prepared wilderness guy.
Like, and Tyler as a character, as a caricature, the fact that he has this run-in with the cops is like, they frame it to be like, yeah, man, the cops are in on it. Or you have you're in Kentucky, you're in this area of the United States, which is one not really interested in people coming in their rural area and poking around, especially with his camera. You have him coming around and going into people's yards, going into people's backyards, doing all these weird things, and yet he makes it seem like, no, the cops were in on it. It's like, no, dude.
You were acting really damn weird in a small town, and they wanted you gone. that was it. Yeah, I just the whole thing, literally like maybe 2 minutes in, I was already like, oh, it's one of these things.
Yeah.
At least it looks good.
Right. They should have been hearing from other people. That's the interesting thing, Nick. I encourage anybody. It's 60 minutes of your life.
I have spent years looking for evidence. Mm-hmm. Send me literally any evidence of anything, and I will try. At this point, it seems unlikely, I'll admit, because it's been a while. I'm almost 40. I've spent, not quite the whole time, probably 25 years.
Yes.
Decently intelligent enough to deal with trying to find out reality, and haven't found any decent evidence yet. And I've seen a lot of supposed evidence, and I've watched a lot of these types of shows, which is why I instantly recognized the style as soon as it started.
Yeah, like the color filters, the soundtrack. There are so many production things that are so intentional. And again, from an entertainment standpoint, it is an excellent show.
Sure. Yeah.
As a piece of fiction, it is an excellent piece of fiction where season 2 takes a couple steps down, but I think season 3, from a place of entertainment, if we're talking about what people in the chat are talking about in terms of like going to a ghost tour in New Orleans, it is an excellent ghost tour if you know that it's fake. You'll have a great time. If you're watching it in terms of this is fake, you'll have a great time. But if you watch this in terms of this is real, you will either struggle or you will get wrapped up into this snake pit.
Sure. It would be like going to a magic show, like a Vegas thing. Like you're going to Penn and Teller. A friend of yours is dragging you to Penn and Teller, and you have no idea what a magic show is.
Amazing.
Like that's the level of sort of, I don't know, disconnection with reality that you need, I think, to think that this is real, just because it is so completely structured as fiction, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these shows aren't. They tend to look a lot worse and are less interesting to watch, and they still don't come up with any evidence, but they at least aren't really framed as fiction. They're framed as a supposed investigation. But like Hellier, very specifically to me, is like written as a fictional story, essentially. That's how it's shot, and that's the sound design. Even when they're like listening for weird sounds in a cave, they still have like an underlying spooky audio track. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't actually hear anything that they supposedly might have heard, because you're just hearing this like spooky rumbling low track just to make it spooky with the lighting and stuff. Like it's very constructed as a fictional story.
It is the tempo, the tone, the entire feel of the show is expertly crafted to elicit an emotional response. And that's why I respect him, because it's like the color palette, the sounds, the way they interview things, the angles, the characters that way. Dana as a person, I used to follow her on Twitter, and after I watched the show, I was like, man, this is great. And then you see what she does in her Twitter life, and you're like, oh, this Dana in the show is a character. Dana on Twitter is who Dana is. I don't like Dana on Twitter. I like Dana in this show.
Okay. Can we talk about the interviews for a second?
Yeah.
Some of them are a little weird, especially as far as investigating a thing.
Sure.
Like in season 2 specifically, what is her name? The daughter of the Woodford.
Yes. We'll call her the daughter. Yes.
Yeah. The daughter of the guy who wrote about the Smiling Man originally.
Yes.
What is it? Cold.
Ingrid Cole.
Ingrid Cole. That's right. The daughter. She wrote a book recently, too, a couple of years ago, I guess, about some more exploits. But anyway, they go to visit her. She seems to be in some kind of like assisted living situation or something. And they go and visit her and have a chat with her about Ingrid Cole and a few different crazy. That's a whole different level of crazy. ultra being stuff.
Yeah.
They jam into season 2. But anyway, they go and visit her to talk to her about that for some reason, even though it doesn't seem very connected to most of the things that they're investigating. And she tells them that Ingrid Gold's children visit her regularly. They've got like 3 years or something of tape on this so far, right?
Yeah.
This woman claims to be visited on regular, like, calendar appointment times. They never follow up.
Never.
They never, ask her if she gave them the message that they left, apparently.
Yeah.
For these, whatever, aliens, ultra beings, depending on the interpretation of Ingrid Gold and his posse.
Yeah.
Like, nothing ever comes of that. And it's just like if you're investigating a thing and you can literally, like,
pinpoint it
on this date, these people are supposedly going to be in this location, and you're clearly not super time sensitive because they've been recording for years already. Yeah. So even if it's months down the line, even if it's like for season 5, like, we've set up the meeting, we've set up cameras, a day before, we got permission to, put a camera in the corner of the room or whatever. None of that. No investigation at all. As soon as they have a lead that might potentially be solid for or against what they're trying to find, just abandon it completely and move on.
Yep. But I feel like that's the point of the show, right? The show is not to dig deep. The show is to skim the surface and see how far they can go, right?
Sure. That's what the show is, I think. Yeah. But that's not what they claim the show is. No. It's certainly not how they advertise the show or how a lot of the fans of the show consider it. And they're definitely not, feeding into that. They're feeding into the fans, thinking that it's all fully real. And, I'm sure they're starting to pimp out, like, season 3 is going to get even crazier, you guys.
What was really interesting is season 2 and season 1, I think, almost came out within 6 months of each other, right? So what is clear is they had all of this shot and done, thinking, all right, cool, we'll put this out. Again, I saw it on Amazon at first, and I know that there was a revenue share on Amazon because I had movies on Amazon, so I understand that. Where it's like they probably made a ton of money on Amazon, and what I think is they probably got a huge, because they've got a Patreon, they've got ways in which this money's coming in.
Oh yeah,
I bet they got a ton of extra funding and said, let's really look at season 3 and let's figure out what we're doing. Let's really make it good. Because it hasn't happened, which is really interesting because I assumed that the 3rd season would have been out already, and yet nothing. And you can't blame COVID. You can't say, oh, it's COVID related, because it's like, it's fucking ghosts. Like, they don't got COVID.
Them alone together in a group that they already stay together.
Yeah.
Another place together alone. So
yeah
it's not. It's just infuriating to me because they treat it as real when it's clearly made as fiction, in my opinion. In this case, there are other shows that infuriate me because they pretend that it's real and it's definitely not structured as fiction. But in this case, they're very much, I think it's clear, at least in my opinion, that it is very much made as a fictional story that they've stuck together from all their footage. And they did a good job of it. It's well made.
Well made.
Because people treat it as reality.
I had to go and buy
completely fictional.
I went, after I watched this, I read the Mothman Chronicles as I needed to, and boy,
years ago, yeah.
That is that if you want to kill any interest in the paranormal, read the Mothman Chronicles, because boy, does that book make you say, how does anybody believe this? And I tried. I wanted to read the Mothman Chronicles. Trust me, I was talking with my wife and I was like, I think I'm going to get into this. And she was like, if this makes you happy, I will support you. I'm a skeptic. I'm not really sure. She does believe in ghosts. But I read the Mothman Chronicles, and I stopped so many times where I was just like, how is this a book? How did someone get the rights to publish this? How is this a book that is still in print? This makes no fucking sense.
You know what it is, Kellen?
What?
It's the spam effect.
It's the spam effect. Walk me through that.
Spam works because it's just pumped out, just everywhere, pumped out, thousands and thousands and thousands of emails to everyone that it can, right? 0.00001% of people reply, but those are the fucking people that they've got.
They got.
If you fall for the broken English, everything nonsensical spam, it's clearly nothing.
Yeah.
And you fall for it, you're in. They've got you on whatever hook that they want to get you on. You're hooked. And they hook enough people that it's worth it.
To make it worth it. Yeah.
And a lot of these paranormal things seem to me like a very similar situation where as soon as one thread can get you hooked,
you're hooked.
Then they've got you. Because if that one thing is real, then like, why can't this other thing be real? I mean, it's not really that different.
You believed in this. Yeah, what if we connect this other thing?
Right. Like you believe there's like goblin people in a cave. Why can't there be a goat sucking creature or Bigfoot or whatever? Like it could be anything.
I will say, Brad, at least in the second season, I see them doubt themselves a lot because there's the whole Green Man thing, which they invest so much time into, and then they drop it so quick because they're like, no, there's nothing here. Right? The second season is almost like a clinic in, well, let's see what sticks in the writing room, right? It's a lot of like, we'll try a little government conspiracy, we'll try a little death cult, we'll try a little bit of this like, man who lives in the tree like thing. Like there's so much stuff in season 2 that it's like, what is this?
That's interesting to me in sort of a weird way, Kellen, that you say that they dropped the Green Man thing, because their finale of season 2 is entirely about trying to call Pan.
Yeah.
They're connecting with the Green Man,
which is so fake. It's
nonsense, but that's what they're doing. Like that's what they claim to be doing in the show.
I just love it. It makes no sense, but like I guess that's the thing that feels like at the end of season 2 they try and they're like, well, I don't know. And that's kind of like the Dana influence, because again, she's sort of the hedge witch. She's the like, hey, let's go to the earth. And I feel like the rest of them are like, that's not going to sell. It's not going to sell, but they want to bring Dana along.
Right. Well, she's the only one that'll use the God helmet. So.
Yeah. Because the rest of them know that it's going to hurt their brainwaves, right?
Well, it'll either do nothing or it's broken, and you definitely shouldn't be using it. I don't see a third option there. I don't know, other than just them being full of shit and doing it, which is a possibility, I guess.
It's a possibility.
It probably wouldn't be one that they would admit to.
No. Brad, here's a bigger question for you.
Okay.
Why do we as human beings like ghost stories so much?
Because they're spooky.
Spooky.
Humans really like adrenaline.
Right?
And being spooked gives you some.
Yeah.
And serotonin in some cases.
Yeah.
And all kinds of brain, fun brain activity. We like altered brain states.
We do.
And ghosts and other spooky things that most people kind of know isn't like super dangerous necessarily, even if they believe in it. Like they're not super worried about it, or they would just leave the haunted place, right? Yeah. So they're sort of in that place where they feel reasonably safe, but they're kind of spooked, and that's fun. It's like a scary movie.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the same way that if you watch a violent movie, Congress is going to get together and say, well, we need to ban these scary movies. Nobody's saying that about violent horror movies, right? No one is saying like, oh, if there's the Paranormal Activity, your Evil Dead, the rest of these movies that are about ghouls and goblins. No one's like, we can't let the kids see this because then they're going to believe it's real, because everyone knows that it's fake. Right. And it's just nice to have something that's like, you know what? Life is a lot of pain, but wouldn't it be cool if instead of pain there was ghosts?
Sure. And like, cool. These people have made a great show.
Yeah.
That's a reasonable level of spooky throughout.
Yeah.
And it's very well shot and it sounds great. And there's a lot of fun stories, especially in season 2, where they just kind of throw everything in that you can go and research more of and get more spooked. And it's sort of great on that level. But a lot of people treat it as real. And that's really weird and sort of scary to me because, like, if people are treating that as real when it's very clearly fictional and structured in a fictional way, they're much more likely to believe other things that don't really have a lot of evidence to them and are much more susceptible to many types of scams or just sort of logical leaps that they maybe shouldn't take for all kinds of reasons. And it's sort of a symptom of how humans don't think so good sometimes.
Humans don't think no good.
brains are weird, and humans don't think so good, myself included, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just it irks me on many levels that something, even when it's constructed so clearly as fiction, is believed by so many people, let alone the ones that are much more sort of either totally believe it themselves and, you know, someone in the crew is messing with them, basically. I can't name names or anything, but I have heard stories from people. I don't want to get sued, let's put it that way. But
we will not name names.
There are certain, you know, stories of certain shows that maybe have been on TV that not everyone was on the same page.
Yes. Some of those shows might rhyme with Broast Munters, right?
I'm not trying to get us sued, Kellen. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying. But yeah, like, there's a lot of people that are way more sinister about it.
Yeah.
Than the people that made Hellier. Let's put it that way. But they are feeding into it.
They are feeding into it.
Their day job is running a traveling museum of the paranormal, which is a little bit.
I guess
it's a little bit Ripley's Believe It or Not. So, you know, depends on the audience, like how much the audience is really like buying it versus they just want a fun thing.
And to me, it is harmless fun. And I have nothing wrong with that in terms of ghost tours, Ripley's, the rest of this. I believe as a student of history and theater that we need to have those kind of like adjacent sort of forms of fun that are like a little dangerous, right? But not so dangerous where you're like, I'm going to get hurt or I'm going to die, right? But just a little to be like, I don't know if I want to go into this tent on the side of the road in this random town, but I know if I do, I'm going to have a story for the rest of my life, depending on how bad it is or how good it is.
Sure. I'm fully on board with that. It's just when it's very much pushed as reality and the people that make them feed into that, it gets depressing in a lot of ways, because I know that there's a decent chunk of people out there that are legit believers, and it's getting worse instead of better, even though the technology to study these things is getting way, way better and cheaper and easier. And it's sad in many ways to me.
What is scary to me, Brad, and if I believe that goblins are real, it is not far for me to believe that the earth is flat.
Sure.
Right? Like there's a level of cognitive dissonance with the world that if you start to believe one thing so fully that you can then convince yourself of anything. And I completely agree with you on this level of there is no harm with someone believing, hey, as a child, I saw a ghost in my house, or my grandmother used to talk about spirits talking to her, right? Does nobody any harm. But it is the people who say, you know what? The government is run by lizards.
Sure.
and
Or
vampires.
$1,500 and I'll let you talk to your dead grandmother.
I'll let you talk to your dead grandma, right? I know where your missing child is.
Right.
Come.
That's where it gets like really like I just want to punch people in the face.
So angry, right? It's that. Which is why I believe that The Dead Zone, starring Christopher Walken, is the greatest movie about paranormal stuff because he's got the gift. He can see it. Does he try and make money? No. He just wants to tell people that the end of the world is coming. But he can't because people don't want to believe it. They want to believe the snake oil salesman. They don't want to believe the truth. And that's the scary thing about it is there could be people out there who have the answers, but people don't want to listen because the answers are too scary. They're much scarier than the false reality we tell ourselves to be okay with this earth that we live on right now.
Sure. When you break your ability to think critically about anything, almost really, you break your ability to think critically about everything because there's always going to be a hole that someone who understands that hole can climb through. We're going to talk about capital F faith a different time. Something up. Maybe we'll save it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I want to start talking about Jim Jones, and I'm like, don't talk about Jim Jones. Don't talk about Jim Jones. Right. Don't talk about Jim Jones.
Okay. Yeah. Can we talk about how ill-prepared the Hellier crew is to investigate anything that they go to?
Constantly. Yeah.
Like they're going to find a cave that has very aggressive goblins in it that literally got someone to abandon his house with his family. They bring like a camera, a microphone, a couple of really like bad lamps so that they can have great mood lighting.
Yeah.
And that's basically it.
I also think those lamps are intentional from Carl's standpoint. I'm sure he knows, hey, we can't have good lamps because I bet the fact that they know how to get there instantly was a big red flag for me. As someone who it's like they know the route. They've never been there before. Nope.
No, they just drove around randomly until they found it. And then they didn't take down the address so that they had to do the same thing again with their own video footage later to find it again. Like professional investigators.
Brad, we're coming up on our time. Are there questions that you want to ask me? Are there things that you wanted to talk about? Nick says fruit snacks. A good point.
Sure. I'm not quite sure where the fruit snacks fit in, but they are tasty. I don't know. Do we have like question in the chat here? Last little while.
Again, Anna believes and Anna's on your side. We have a lot of people.
Anna are like best friends, I think, on these streams. Anna is like on board with me. It's great. It's good to have at least one person.
One person, because most of the people here are like, oh yeah, like my mom is a ghost, and it's like,
I am a ghost.
I'm a ghost.
Yeah, a lot of people think that I just can't be convinced, which I don't know if I can be, but I haven't been yet. Let's put it that way. I do try. I am very familiar with many of the things that they deal with on Hellier, even though they definitely use a shotgun in that second season for all kinds of stuff. I had read the Mothman prophecies as a kid. I knew all about Ingrid Cold. I didn't know too much about his kids. I haven't read the recent book from the guy's daughter or anything, but I am very much on board with trying to understand the world that they supposedly are investigating in Hellier, but I have not yet seen any decent evidence.
Yeah, it's hard for me, Brett, because I when it comes to ghosts, I'm like, ghosts, whatever. But when it comes to aliens, when they start talking about aliens and the fact that Ingrid Cole is sort of this alien, like he's a Nord. There's so many things for me that my interest, my dabbling in that, where I don't believe in paranormal stuff, but I believe in aliens in this paranormal realm this way. And it's hard because that's the hole right there, where I can take all of the things that I believe about aliens and I can transfer it over to the ghost realm and say, well, if I believe in aliens this way, how come I can't believe in ghosts? And I'm like,
Sure.
it's so tough. It's so tough.
It is tough. It definitely is tough. Team Brad.
Team Brad.
Yeah, it's tricky. I don't know, man. I just know that I really hated watching it every minute. Infuriated me more and more and more.
Well, Brad,
especially once that like switch flipped, like, oh, they're just making a fiction show.
They're just making a fiction show.
It's still like really aggravated me, and I could like tell what they were going to do before they did it. As soon as they got any thread that they could grasp, like, I wonder what the next thing is going to be, because we're not going to learn any more about this. Every time, like 7 or 8 times, I think, in season 2, they were like, we're heading towards the, like, oh, we might get to it. Never mind. It's like, infuriating. And then people are like, no, that's because they're finding a more universal. It's like, no, it's because they're not trying to find it.
Yeah, they're intentionally scraping the surface.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, I have to say, I asked you to watch an episode, and you watched all of it.
I can't partially do a thing, Kellen.
I appreciate that, Brad. We've devoted an hour and a half to this conversation. I think we've covered a lot of grounds. I think we've had a lot of fun tonight. I'm going to ask you a question, Brad.
Okay.
Do you want to talk with me again next week, or have I, by asking you to watch the show?
We're no longer friends. Never talking to you again. No, it's fine. It's great.
Okay, good.
I didn't swear as much as I thought I might have to.
I think people were a little surprised, Brad. People were they wanted to see you.
Maybe I'll have to get even more upset for the capital F fate.
Yes, we'll talk about it for the capital F. Well, Brad, I'll say this, and maybe we'll tease this. If there is something you want me to consume, either a book, a movie, a piece of psychedelic fruit or acid that'll change my mind about something.
Sure, okay.
I believe that the ball is in your court, and you can tell me, hey, Kellen, I want you to do this, and then we'll do a whole nother episode where it's just me struggling or being like, I really like this, and then you're like, how, what?
Awesome. Okay, I'm on board. Absolutely. Also, I think I'm going to read that second book by I can't remember her name, but it seems like it came out like 2 or 3 years ago, I think. But yeah, it's like pretty recent.
If you have a PDF copy, send it my way, and we'll read it together.
Absolutely. It's a super weird like world to read about. Just when people like believe it hurts my brain.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's supposed to hurt your brain. That's how you know that's how you know it's fake.
Okay. Well, this was a lot of fun.
This is a blast, Brett. This is an absolute blast. So
next week, same time, we'll figure out something to talk about, I'm sure.
I'm sure we will find some things to talk about. I'm going to ask this to the audience. Again, we talked in the beginning. If anybody's still here, do you believe in ghosts? Are ghosts real? After what we've talked about, has Brad and my conversation swayed anyone into thinking that maybe they weren't a believer and now they are? Maybe they were skeptic. Not a surprise from Anna, of course. But is there anything that's happened during this conversation that maybe someone is like, nope, I do believe in ghosts, and I'm going to prove it to Brad and Kellen that they do exist?
Prove it to me. I think everyone who's watching can probably figure out how to contact me.
Yeah.
If you can't, just email or message the YouTube channel and I'll find it. But send me things. If you think you got some proof, I am on board. Absolutely. And we'll talk about it.
Brad, how great would it be if someone sent us proof and that this show, Brad and Kellen talk about stuff, was the thing that opened up the doorway to understanding what ghosts are, improve so many paranormal things. What is this?
Think of the book deals. Oh, it'd be so good. I'm gonna get an agent right now. It's gonna be great. No, that would be awesome. Like, seriously, if someone could prove to me that basically anything from Hellier or any of the sort of paranormal world is true, that would be amazing to me.
Yes.
That would be like the best thing that's ever happened to me, because it would be me getting closer to reality, and that is what I would like.
Brad, I do think the one part of Hellier that they 100% nail without having to add anything to it is how fucking creepy Hellier is, probably. Right?
It doesn't seem like kind of a creepy place, but I mean, they're purposefully trying to make it like a creepy ambience, so who knows?
But Brad, I'm telling you, if you go to Rust Belt cities, especially in that part of Kentucky, you go to Rust Belt,
there's definitely some high creep factors.
what I think is so funny, Brad, is you could take Hellier and say, "Cool, I'm going to put this about an hour outside Detroit, and there's the same city that exists that is burnt out, and there are probably ghost stories. I'm going to put that in Maryland. I'm going to put that in Albany, New York. I'm sure our friend BJ knows of plenty of ghost story places, and it's so funny to be like these places that were post-industrial America, that where people just, rather than what we do out west, which is you make it a ghost town specifically where everyone leaves, people stuck around there and they never left, and it's just weird. It's weird. It's scary.
Yeah, I mean, that's, people are scary and weird is kind of the thing. People are scary and weird enough. We don't need goblins. But if they exist, I mean, it would be cool to find out.
Brad, we got to put that on a t-shirt. People are scary and weird.
That's got to be a t-shirt already.
It's got to be a t-shirt.
Someone has made that, or some variation.
Brad, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Even though I hated 15 hours the last week, I enjoyed this conversation, so it was worth it.
I enjoyed it completely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We'll be back next week. Same paranormal time, same paranormal channel.
Sure. Unless the feds scoop us up for talking absolutely. About it.
Again, if you're connected to Arby's or Burger King, we would love to get us a corporate sponsorship.
If Ingrid Cold could just stop by and sponsor the show, that would be
fantastic. If you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell icon so you can be reminded of when the show starts. And Brad, we'll be here next week, right?
See you next week, everybody.